I hate videos. Now, you may be wondering, if I hate videos, what the heck am I doing here? Whew. Happy Wednesday, everyone. It is Wednesday, the 22nd of May. Oh my goodness, can you believe the year is going by so quickly? And we're almost completely done with our fifth month. It's crazy to think. For those of you that are listening on radio, I want to say thank you for tuning in. Good evening to Wendy and Cecilia, as well as my friend Jay on the other side of the world in Cape Town, South Africa. We appreciate you for being here and joining us. I hope that you are enjoying the show so far. We played a song that I dedicated to my amazing guest, Sejal, and that was Superwoman by Alicia Keys. I'm looking forward to the conversation with her. Definitely, she is a superwoman, and I can't wait for her to share her power framework with us because she says that is what has helped her overcome adversity. She also speaks about it in her second TEDx talk. So, if you would like to listen or watch that TEDx talk on YouTube. I have shared it in the WhatsApp group for Africa Online Radio, and I will also share it on this show's stream. It is definitely something worth listening to, and I'm sure that you will be blessed like I was listening to it. Um, if you and I have not met yet, I want to say welcome to you. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Inge van Roy, and I am driven by the principle of Ubuntu, which means I am because we are. I am recognized as a community connection catalyst, and I love highlighting amazing change makers in our world, especially on this show, which is Wonder Women Wednesday, because we get to highlight ordinary women who make an extraordinary difference in the lives of others. I want to say thank you to our wonderful sponsors. So if you're listening live on radio, our sponsors are actually Africa Online Radio, where we bring you only the very best in local and international music. We are your oasis of entertainment, your cups of vibe for those people who understand Afrikaans. And if you'd like to jump on radio and listen on radio, you may do so via the link that is scrolling across your screen, which is africa.co.za. And definitely, I want to encourage you, join us at least after my conversation with Sejal, because I'm going to be diving deeper into the topic that she will uncover for us shortly. So please come on over, go to africa.co.za and click listen live. That is where you're going to get those wrap up nuggets with me on the other side of this conversation with my guest, Sejal Thakkar. And so, without further ado, let me welcome her. And if you're watching live on YouTube, on LinkedIn, or on Twitter, please drop us a comment and let us know. We'd love to make you part of the conversation. Without further ado, let's welcome Sejal. Hello, Sejal. Welcome. thank you for being here with us.
Oh, thank you so much for that wonderful welcome. I'm excited to have this conversation with you, Ingor.
Me as well. Me as well. Sejal, won't you please tell us who is Sejal Thakkar and what do you do?
Oh, thank you. I'm an employment law attorney. I've been licensed in California since about 2003. And so, for the first part of my career, I was actually a defense attorney. So, I was practicing employment law, representing companies and their supervisors in cases that dealt primarily with harassment, discrimination, retaliation, wrongful termination. So, a lot of different kinds of employment law cases. And I did that for a number of years, Ingor. And, to be honest, I found myself conflicted, because I was seeing all kinds of incivility in the workplace. You were talking about inappropriate touching, demeaning behavior. We were talking about abusive conduct, bullying. And so when I felt that the employer didn't do what they should have done, or the manager could have addressed it differently to prevent the problem from escalating, I found myself conflicted, and I felt that if the employee had been treated unfairly, that we needed to address the situation properly.
Mhm.
So instead of litigating the case, I found myself educating managers and employees about how to properly handle these issues. So I knew it was time to make a change. And so, when my son was born in 2012, I decided that rather than coming in afterwards and cleaning up the mess, I really wanted to shift my focus and really work with organizations proactively to help create better cultures, right? So in 2017, I started my own company called Train Extra, where I provide customized training workshops to organizations on a lot of different topics, but all around how do we create safe, positive, inclusive workplaces, right? So that's part of what I'm doing now. And then the other part of what I'm doing, which is also very exciting, is a few years ago, I joined a venture studio called Nobody Studios, and I'm their chief culture officer, really sort of now working with an organization to help create the culture from the ground up. So it's like everything that I've learned, everything that I've done in my whole career is now being put to that test of, all right, you talk a lot about doing this, but now let's see you actually do it, right? So
I love it.
it's been an incredible journey.
I love that. Oh my goodness. Well, I'm excited for our conversation. I know that you're a powerhouse of a woman. I've heard you speak a few times, and it's an honor to have you. So thank you and welcome. It's good to have you here.
No, thank you. I was so excited when you invited me to be on here. And quick shout out to our friend Claudia Wyatt, who
Yes.
actually introduced the two of us. So thank you, Claudia, for
Yes.
connecting us. And this conversation wouldn't have been possible without her. So thank you again, Claudia.
Yes. Thank you, Claudia. Before Claudia introduced us, I actually heard you speak at a kindness rally.
Oh, yeah. I love
Yeah.
kindness.
I,
I know. Is she doing them again? I got to look into that again
not
because those
yet.
were really incredible. Okay.
Not yet. She sent me a message this morning to say hi and let me know that she's thinking of me. So shout out to you, Andrea Sanchez, as well. We appreciate you for bringing us together as well. It was really, you know, I don't know if you know, but I think you left, but you spoke and then I spoke later on at the same rally.
No, I
So,
heard you. I
oh,
was there.
did you?
I heard you speak too. Yeah, I was
Oh,
there.
awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. Anyway, Angel, won't you walk us through your career journey? Let us know. You did give us a little bit of the meat and potatoes, but could you dive a little bit deeper and let us know how you got to where you are today from where you started?
Absolutely. And again, as I was saying, as an employment law attorney, I was working on all these cases and I was seeing a lot of incivility happening in the workplaces. And I
Mm,
saw organizations spending money on, providing resources and support and training to their employees. But I felt that there was a lot of components that were missing in the kinds of workshops and trainings I was seeing. And then when you look at the numbers and the statistics, right, about why we need to do this right, as I was kind of doing the training, I started reading a lot of different materials and research, and I really rely heavily on a report that came out by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission that came out in 2016. I like to say that that was my business plan. When I read that report, I'm like, this is the problem I want to address, and that this was the first time. And at least I know there's some people that were talking about civility in the workplace prior to this, but to have, a government agency that oversees all of these types of employment law cases come out and say we need more civility in our workplaces and the trainings need to
Yes.
be centered in around civility. And then you start looking at the numbers, by SHRM, about how there's $223 billion that employers have spent in a period of 5 years because of turnover and because of toxic work cultures. When I was reading all this stuff, that's what really inspired me to start working with organizations proactively. And so I shifted my focus,
Mm.
and I started working with organizations. But I'll tell you what, like, you talk about how much of an impact this type of training, has. Since I've started my business, now I do most of my workshops virtually because of the pandemic. And so
Mm.
prior to that, I was traveling all over the place. But now I would say 95% of the work that I do is virtual. And I'm
Mm.
going to tell you, it's been such a pleasure having the privilege to work with organizations, not just in the United States, but across the globe. I've seen firsthand the positive changes that can happen when you do this right, right? When you have the
Yeah.
right components of the
Yes.
training. And again, training is, I just want to make it very clear, training is one component of
Yes.
the entire strategy. It's not the only thing you have to do, right? So I want to
Mm.
make that very clear. But I'll give an example because I was thinking about this for our conversation. I work with this tech company right on the peninsula, and they were dealing with change in management. A lot of people, after the pandemic, a lot of people have chosen to not go back to work full time. And
Mm-hmm.
this tech company had switched over from to a more hybrid environment. And as a result, just like a lot of organizations are seeing, they saw a lot of turnover. So
Mm.
they saw a lot more workplace conflicts. They saw a lot of bias coming to the top. They had different generations working together. And so anyway, so they reached out to me and I worked with them, and they had employees in different states, in different countries. And so we did
Mm.
the sessions virtually. And so far I've done a series of 9 sessions with this company, right? So I've worked with them consistently now for a few years, but they've done evaluations, they've done feedbacks, and they've made other changes as well. As I said, training is only one component, but to see the outcomes of
Mm.
how employees are reporting that they're better able to understand each other, that they have
Yes.
more open communication, that there's more empathy in the culture, there's more of a learning. I mean, so the outcomes that I get to see, and not to mention, those are just the conflicts went down. Those conflicts decreased significantly in this organization.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just picking out one company. I can give you so many of these examples, right? Where people's productivity has gone through the roof because they're
Yeah.
not worried about incivility happening to them, right? Or feeling
Yes.
excluded. And so again, building civil and inclusive workplaces, I chose this area not only because it creates better companies and cultures, which of course it does, but it also, the goal is to create better people who then
Mm.
contribute to those workplaces and to our communities, right? So
Yes.
I just chose this because I'm like, this is a closed enough environment that I can start to make an impact that will hopefully have that bigger ripple effect out to our communities, right?
I love it. And that is a perfect segue to what I want to say, which is, I told you that I'm driven by Ubuntu, and the reason why is really because I wouldn't be me without the people that I've had in my circle, in my community. Um, you know, Many things that I can tell you about me, but it's all really because of people that have inspired me, people that have spurred me on, people that have encouraged me to develop and grow into who I am today. To me, community is everything. What does it mean to you, Sejal?
Yeah, no, community is super important, you know, and community is, to me, is just, it's a space, right? It's a
Mm,
space where people feel welcome, where they feel
mm,
that sense of belonging, right? Which is what my
yes.
second TEDx talk we're going to talk about is all about, is belonging. But where it doesn't matter what your identities, what your perspectives are, what your beliefs are, you know, you're still going to feel welcome in this
Mm,
community. And I just posted about this yesterday. I did a LinkedIn, I did a poll on LinkedIn where I said, now we've got communities that are virtual communities, right? So
mhm,
is there a difference between physical communities and virtual communities? And it's so interesting to see people's responses. But for me, I've met so many incredible people through my virtual LinkedIn community, right? Like you
yes.
and I and Claudia and I and so many of the other people, you and I have so many connections that we share, that we both
Yes.
know, that all met virtually, right? So again, it's where you have that sense of belonging, you know, where
Mhm,
you show up as the real you. And obviously, you know, when I say that, I always want to clarify, you have to use your discretion in showing and sharing what you want, right? Doesn't mean you just throw everything out there, you know, in whatever environment you're in. It still
no.
means you have to be professional if you're in a professional environment, whatnot, right? But where you could show up and you don't have to worry about trying to fit in or feel,
Mm,
you know, or just having to deal with bias, you know, where people are consciously working at it, you know, and they're humble and they're
mhm,
doing the work to move to make you feel included, right? And
love
so
it.
yeah, so I could talk about communities all day long because it's so
Love
important.
it. Speaking of community, how about we say hello to some people that are tuned in? Oh, we have Ileana. She is tuned in from Arkansas, and she says, "Hello, everyone." And she says, "My world is always a 360." I love it. Then we have Val. Hello, Val. She says, "Celebrating the two of us." Thank you, Val. You're so sweet. Um, and then I also have some messages on WhatsApp, actually, in the WhatsApp group for the radio station. And we have Wendy, who's tuned in from Cape Town, South Africa, as well as Cecilia and Sebastian and Sister and Amanda. And I have a friend, Jay, tuned in as well. So awesome to have you here with us, everyone. Um, Sejal, how is the work that you do related to community? Like, what is the impact on community that you have? You touched on it a little bit, but can you just dive a little bit deeper for us, please?
Sure, sure. Yeah, no, I mean, everything that I do is all centered around how do we create spaces, whether you talk about workplace culture, you talk about community, you talk about wherever, right? But it's really about how can we create spaces that are, number one, positive, right? We need more positivity in the world, from just what I've gone through and the adversities that I've gone through. You know, always having that positive mindset and outlook has really been something that's been very helpful to me. So that's something that I want to do with my workshops, with my speaking, whatever I'm doing. I always want to try to put a positive lens on the conversation, because that's what I think motivates people to actually make a change and do something rather than, you know, being bystanders, right? So positive, safe. Safety is a huge part, right? Psychologically safe, where people can voice their ideas, their concerns in a productive way, right? So that we can all innovate and move forward. So positive, safe, and inclusive workplaces, right?
Love
So all of the talks that I do, all of the workshops I do have that underlying theme of those three components. And that's the kind of difference I want to make in our communities, right? And so when I'm long gone, people are going to be like, what did Sejal do? Well, she helped create positive, safe, and inclusive
it.
spaces, right? That's what I want
Mm.
to do.
Okay, I didn't ask you, I didn't send you this question, but I want to ask a question that's sort of related to what you're saying, um and it's related really to me and my background. So I'll tell you just quickly, before I ever said yes to being on somebody's show or speaking on a stage. Um, there was a friend of mine that kept reaching out and asking me to be his guest. And I would say, no, I'm not ready yet. I'm not
Mhm.
ready. And eventually I said yes because he would come back to me every few weeks and say, come on, Inga, please come and be my guest on my show. And when I said yes, he said, okay, since you said yes, I'm going to send you my questions so you can prepare yourself. And one of the questions really stumped me because at that point, I was very new to entrepreneurship and really new to the journey of growth. So I
Mhm.
hadn't fully thought about who do I want to be moving forward, right? And one of the questions that he asked me was so profound. He said, what is your life statement?
Mhm.
And it made me think because I never defined a life statement at that point. And I knew who I was. I knew what I was about. I believe in positivity. I love people.
Mhm.
Um, but I just didn't decide what that was yet. And so I had to sit down and decide because I'm going to be interviewed about this. And the life statement that I came up with is this: to positively impact the lives of others.
Mhm.
So, Sejal, what drives you? What is your life statement? Because I know you're making waves out there, and you are making a massive impact through your TEDx talks, through your workshops, through even just your presence on LinkedIn. So, can you tell us what is your life statement? What drives you to do what you do?
Yeah, that's it. It's very similar to yours, right? I plant seeds every day to empower people to create more positive, safe, and inclusive workplaces. I know that very clearly now. I have my lane and my statement and my purpose and values have obviously changed over
Mm,
time.
mhm,
But honestly, the pandemic was where it got really clear for me, like what I wanted to do, because I was literally at the top of the mountain. I felt like my business had been going now for 2.5 years. I spoke at some big conferences, like back to back. People were like, "Who's Sejal?" Like I felt like I was getting some attention. Like, okay, I'm ready to go now. Let me make a bigger
mm,
impact. And the pandemic just wiped me out. Like it was literally
mm,
business disappeared overnight. I'm a single
mhm,
mom, and that's scary, right? And you really, when you face fear in that way, like I had to decide, what am I going to do? I
mhm.
have a law degree, so I had choices. I can go back to practicing law if I want to.
Yeah.
I've got solid connections in the legal industry, right? There's
Mhm,
a lot of things I could do if I put my mind to it, right? Like a lot of
mhm,
transferable skills. But do I give up on my dream of my company, which I had worked
mhm.
so hard for, because it was impossible unless I went virtual.
Yeah.
And Ingor, as I mentioned, I do this for impact. I'm not, I'm really not, yes, do I want to make good money? Of course, who doesn't, right? But I'm
Yeah.
not for the money. Otherwise, I'd be hiring a whole marketing team and I'd be doing a lot more, right? I'm doing this all myself, letting it happen organically, right?
Mm,
But I had to make that choice. And right at that same time, I got a job offer, a
mm,
really good job offer. It was an investigator position. I've done tons of investigations. I could easily go right back into it, but it meant more time. It meant time away from my son, which was the whole
mm,
reason I started my company, was to have more time with my son. So now I had a choice to make.
mhm,
Do I continue down the path that I want to do, or do I go back and make money, which I needed in that moment? And so I sat down and did exactly that. I said, why are you doing Train Extra? And that's really where my website got updated, where I said, this is why. And that became my statement, because what I realized was that, okay, I'm not getting paid to do the work right now, but I can keep talking about it just like I'm doing right now. Right. And that's what I started doing. I started
yeah,
doing podcasts and live streams. And I said, I'm going to just keep talking about this over and over again until I get back on my feet, right? But
mm,
you have that intersection where you have to make that choice of, is this really my state? Is this my life statement? Because if I get tested, am I going to choose this path, or I'm going to let it go? And it's okay if you change. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with
yes,
being fluid, but I got very clear on that. And I've now, whenever I get possible opportunities to collaborate or to do things, even with like Nobody Studios, it had to line up to my life statement, because I'm like, this is what I'm out there doing. So if you want to bring me in, this is what I'm going to be doing in here. Is that what you want me to do? If that
Mm,
lines up, then perfect. You
mm.
know, because this is what I'm passionate about. And this is where I feel like I can really make a difference. Right. So,
I love it. I love it. I want to say hello to Daisy, who's also tuned in. She's in Lorain, Ohio. And I know you're in the Bay Area, yes?
I am. Yeah.
How's the weather there? It
It's
looks fairly hot.
gorgeous. It's
Mm.
beautiful right now. Yeah, I'm going to actually head out for a hike as soon as we're done. But it's super beautiful right now. It's like in the 70s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Love it. Thank you. Sejal, when we were deciding the theme of this show, I asked you a question, and that is, what is the one thing that has helped you overcome adversity in your life? Um, won't you please dive into that and share a bit about that with us?
yeah. There's a lot of things, right, that help me get through adversity. I think it's resilience, right? I like to say resilience is like my middle name, right? Because there's a lot that goes into resilience. But the one thing about, why I think I've been able to move mountains, which is what I've done in my life, and overcome the adversities, is part of resilience being mindset, right? Like for me, I've always had a growth mindset. I've always looked at anything, whether it's, even if I achieve my goal, right? I'm like, okay, how do I improve? Like, what am I learning from this, and how do I get better? That's just how I've always been, right?
Mm,
But that's what's helped me be more resilient. So when I'm dealing with situations that are out of my control, and that's part of life. It's not always going to be happy. I wish it was, but it's not. And what I've learned is it's all there for a reason. And so what am I learning from this situation, and how do I move this, or how do I get around it, or how do I bust through it? And I'm always looking for solving a problem. I think we limit ourselves when we think that we know all the answers, and I
mm,
learned a long time ago, I don't know all the answers, and I don't think I know all the answers, but surrounding yourself, like you said, with the community, right, of people that really support you, that uplifts you, that, are your cheerleaders. We all need
yes.
people to believe in us, because if we feel that other people believe in us, it's going to make us believe in ourselves, even when
Mm,
we don't, right? Or we don't think we should. So
mm,
having that community, that's a lesson that I learned a lot later in life. Honestly, Ingvar, it's that's part of why it's part of that framework in my second TEDx talk, is because I learned that lesson too late. I wasn't surrounded with people that were uplifting me. I was more surrounded with people that were just sort of, there, but we just kind of grew apart, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think everybody's meant to be there the whole way through, right? People come in and out of your journey for a reason. But now that I've learned the importance of community and how valuable it is in supporting me, I kind of think of it like the wind beneath my wings. I have confidence in what I can do, and I know I'm going to work my tail off to get what I want. But it's very helpful and essential that I surround myself with people that can be that wind to help me, get through it. So, yeah.
beautiful, beautiful. Um, Speaking of community, let's see. Val just posted something. She says, "Good for you, Sejal and Inga. I love how you both are following your passion and your life's missions."
Love
Thank you.
Val. Val is so cool. She's phenomenal.
Yes, she is. And so are you, Val. We are because you are as well. So thank you for being an inspiration to us. Um, Tell us about your power framework, please.
Yeah, so just a little bit of background, right? So the framework was really, so I've done two TEDx talks, and the framework that I'm going to talk about during this conversation is from the second one. But it really builds on what I talk about in my first talk, right? So, it talks about my personal journey of my background. And my parents are immigrants from India. We were the only Indian family. I was born in Chicago, but I grew up in a predominantly Italian neighborhood. And so when I was growing up, I dealt a lot with harassment, discrimination. And that's a big reason why I do the work that I do now, right? I don't want other people going through that sort of harm, right? And so exclusion, right? You feel like you don't have that sense of belonging. And for me, that was even amplified because I was dealing with intersectionalities of my culture, straddling sort of culture house versus outside of the house. And so I was feeling this sense of I didn't belong anywhere. As I was growing up, I didn't feel like I belonged at home. I didn't feel like I belonged outside the home. So I grew up with that feeling of wanting to belong, right? And so the second TEDx talk really talks about when you're feeling excluded, when you're in those environments, and we all are, in some way or another, we've all felt that sense of lack of belonging, right? And so I wanted this talk to really speak to everybody. It really applies, this framework applies to everybody, and it can be used in a lot of different contexts, right? And so I created this acronym of using the word power to help people give them strategies that they can use when they're feeling excluded or when they're feeling that sense of lack of belonging, right? And so I can walk us through that framework, but that kind of just sets a little bit of the background on what the purpose of this talk was. And so the P, do you want me to go through each one?
Yes.
Or yeah.
Yes, please do.
So I'll just go through it quickly, and then I'll let you kind of just ask me, follow-up questions if they are. But so the P in the power framework is for pain, right? It really starts with acknowledging, and recognizing that when you're feeling excluded, no matter what is a source of that exclusion or why you're feeling excluded, that the pain that you feel is real. It's a real pain for you. And you, in order for you to get to that sense of belonging, you have to work through your pain. There's no way around it, right? So the talk is really beautiful, in my opinion. And this is what I think is my legacy talk. This is what I want to be remembered for, because what I try to do, and I hope I accomplish that in my talk, is I try to show two stories. I try to show my story of a person who didn't have support, who didn't have resources, who was dealing with a lot of pain as a child, who didn't know how to deal with the pain, and how I dealt with it, right? And so I dealt with it with unhealthy coping mechanisms, right? I tried to numb my pain. I tried to run from it. I tried to hide my pain. I tried to deny my pain. I did everything because I didn't know how to deal with my pain, right? And then I share the story of my son, who is well supported, who does have resources, who, he's got two parents that are constantly looking at how we can support him. He's got all of that stuff, and how he deals with that pain of exclusion when he's feeling excluded, right? And so how he goes to finding that sense of belonging, and how I go through finding that sense of belonging. So it starts with pain, right? It starts with recognizing that we're all sort of victims, I like to say, of our own upbringings and what we've gone through in our lived experiences in one way or the other. And so once you recognize what that pain is, then you can sort of go to the next part of the framework, which is you have to be open, right? You have to be open to saying, okay, these are the cards I've been dealt with. This is my emotional pain. Now it's up to me to recognize, how am I going to deal with the situation, right? How am I going to react and respond to what's going on? And so I talk about, and I give some strategies of when you deal with it, you want to stay open, right? Because if you close down, then you're not going to find that sense of belonging, at least not in your community. And you may not even find it within yourself, right? So the talk sort of gives some strategies on how you can stay open. And then the next part is willing, right? You have to be willing to do the work, because no one else is going to do that work for you. You have to be willing to make those connections, to build that community. Because I could have shut myself off and said, you know what? I don't want any communities. I could be the victim, or I'm going to have to invest and put myself out there to more hurt, potentially more hurt, but also to recognize that I need to reconnect with myself as well as other people. I have to
Mm-hmm.
be willing to do the work. So I share some stories and ways that my son did when he was, when he was feeling excluded in his story, how he was willing to step out of his comfort zone and try to reconnect with his friend. How he didn't get all judgmental. He was willing to look at it from different perspectives. He was willing to practice empathy, right? And he was willing to take responsibility that he had to do some work as well to try to build that bond with his friend.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about the E, which is kind of what you and I started this conversation off talking about, is our community and the energy we get from people around us. Are we surrounding ourselves with people that believe in us, that are bringing us that positive energy? And I know you resonate with this, because when you find that community, like Val, part of that, Claudia, and a lot of the people I see, Leslie Flowers jumping on here too, a lot of the people that we know that bring this, it creates that kind of renewed energy within ourselves, that we feel more connection, we feel more meaning, behind what we're doing. And then the R
Mm-hmm.
really is tying everything together. Is the R is really about just being your authentic self, and it really comes down to, what is your self-worth? What do you think your self-worth is? And if you're hiding parts of your identity, if you're hiding or numbing out parts of you, then how can somebody else make you feel like you belong? They don't really know the real you. So coming out from behind those walls and really unlocking who you truly are and letting the world see that, being vulnerable and being open to letting people in is a huge part of that. So that's quickly in a nutshell. Some of the strategies that I share. Obviously, there's a lot more in the talk than just that, but
I love it. So, for those that are listening, it is pain, open, willing, energy, and real. That's beautiful. Really, really beautiful, Sejal. So, it's not by accident that we come across things or develop frameworks, strategies. What did you go through that you ended up developing this framework?
yeah, thank you. That's a great journey that I've been on. Is really what when you think about all the things that have happened to you. Why am I doing this work now, and what caused me to get there? And I know exactly when. When I started noticing when I was younger, and I was dealing with these acts of exclusion. Where I was feeling like I didn't belong. I was starting to go down this negative path, Ingor. I was acting out. I was being very reactive. I had a lot of anger and rage as I was dealing with these issues as a young child and not feeling like anybody had my back. You learn to rely on yourself, right? And you have to build that inner companion in yourself that you have to trust and know that has your back, right? But I was dealing with these acts of exclusion at school, but then they started getting closer to the home. They
Mm.
were there was graffiti on our house. There was
Oh,
eggs
wow.
being thrown in our house. It got really close to the home. And that's where I really was felt like, okay, I'm spiraling right now. I need to figure out a different approach. And that's where I think I really started. I recognized, and luckily I had my father who was the one person that I can talk to about what I was going through. And he would
Mm.
always remind me, hurt people hurt other people.
Yes.
He would say that all the time. And I talk about him in my first TEDx talk, right? And he would always remind me, like, I know you're feeling this way, but if they're making you hurt, that they're also going through some things. And at the time, I really didn't understand it. At the time, that would only make me more upset and more
Yeah.
angry,
Yeah.
but as I've looked back on everything, I realized that those kids that were bullying me, they were victims of their own circumstances, and that
Mm.
just got amplified when I became an attorney. And now I was representing people who were accused of doing bad things. And I got to see it from their perspective. And I was
Mm.
surprised. I really was surprised. I was thinking I was going to see these like really bad supervisors and managers. And really, a lot of them were just trying to do the best they could, but they didn't have the education, or they lacked
Mhm.
awareness, or they were
Mhm.
biased. And I
Mhm.
realized, like, if we don't stop this cycle, it just continues. and
Yes.
continues. And so somebody needs to break that cycle, and
Yes.
I decided a long time ago I was going to break that cycle. I wasn't going to continue to perpetuate it. I wasn't going to treat people badly because they were treating me badly. I just wasn't going to do that. And I'm
Mm,
not perfect. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of things I've done in my life that I wish I could have done differently. But that became my goal, is how do I become better, and how do I empower people with information? Because ultimately I can't change your mind. I can't change anybody's mind. You have to change your own perspective. But I can present you with information. And that's what I think that I'm doing, is I'm planting those seeds. I'm saying, here is
yes.
information you may not know about that might
Yes.
make it a better ride for you in this journey, because you're going to go through it regardless. Do you want it to be better?
Yes.
Or do you want to keep doing the same thing, right? And so both of the TEDx talks and all of the things that I'm doing is really about providing information and saying, here, you could take some of that control back. You don't have to give your control away. And that's what that power,
Mm,
that whole power acronym is about, taking your power back. Yes, it wasn't great what you went through. All of us have gone through horrible situations, right? But take radical responsibility, take your power,
yes.
right? And make it better going forward. I know you
Yes.
love that, and I know you that's all what you do too. So
I love it. I love it. Honestly, one thing that I can say when I'm looking at this power acronym is really that it starts with pain, right? It starts with pain. And I want to highlight the fact that regardless of your situation, regardless of who you are, or the labels that are applied to you, your background, your now, right now as well, regardless of any of that, we all go through pain.
yes,
We all go through pain, and we can all benefit from, you know, this power acronym, which teaches us that we can muscle through the pain. We can
yep,
get through this situation that we are in right now, or we were in. And how? By being open, by being willing, by exposing yourself to the right energy and to be real,
yes.
allowing yourself to show up authentically. So thank you, Sejal. That was powerful. And I did say earlier, I knew that this is going to be a powerful conversation, no pun intended.
Thank you. I love that, Ingvar. And I'll just throw it out there that I did another talk after the second TEDx talk called Instead Talk, right?
Mm,
360. And it's on my LinkedIn profile under featured. And maybe you could share this with people, but it applies that same framework of power that I used in my second TEDx talk to another situation, just to show people
mm,
that this can apply to every single one of us. And so in that third talk that I did, I apply that same framework, but I apply it specifically to intersectionality. It's like when you belong to different identities, which we all do. So again, it's universal, right? It applies universally. But I talk
mhm,
about specifically, Indian and American culture. For you, it could be different identities, but whatever. That sometimes our identities intersect, and
mhm,
because of those intersections, then you result that causes more exclusion, right? So for me, those two intersectionality caused more exclusion because I felt like I didn't fit into either one. So I apply the same power framework in that context to say, okay, how can I go from feeling like I don't belong to either culture or either identity to feeling that sense of belonging? So I continue to build on that power framework in that other talk.
love it. I want to say hello to Trudy. Thank you so much for tuning in. Good to have you here with us. Um, and let's just go to the comments quickly. I saw a good one, so here we go. Val says, Sejal, your TED Talks are excellent, so powerful and empowering.
Thank you.
It's beautiful.
Sending your hugs.
I also want to say hello to my friend Danrich. He is tuned in from Toronto, so not too far from me. Thank you for being here, Danrich. And then we have, wow, Leslie. She says, good afternoon. And what does the SE stand for? I don't know. I don't know.
Seattle?
So
Seattle? I don't know.
maybe Seattle, USA. So thank you for being here with us, Leslie. Nice to see you as well. Yes, I forget you also know, you probably also know Leslie because of
I
Andrea,
do. We're
maybe?
connected. Yeah, we're connected on LinkedIn.
Ah, okay. Leslie was a Wonder Woman a few weeks ago.
Oh,
So, yeah. Um, do you have time? We have time for one more story if you'd like to share something else with us.
yeah. Look, I would say if you haven't seen the first TEDx talk, I would recommend that you watch that because that's where this whole thing starts, right? The first talk really is talking about, you know, a lot of us have gone through life feeling excluded. And when you start looking at why we felt excluded, you realize that it's because of bias, right? And bias
Mm-hmm.
impacts us all. It's either conscious bias or unconscious bias.
Unconscious.
And
Mm,
there's a huge lack of awareness on this topic. And when I learned about the power of unconscious bias, and
mm-hmm.
really, when I looked at all the bullies, when I was being harassed and discriminated, and I realized had they been aware of their biases, that I wouldn't have gone through what I went through. And when we talk about in a workplace culture and some of the behaviors I saw as an attorney over and over again, I'm like, if these people were aware of their bias. And the thing with unconscious bias is that we need to normalize this conversation, Anger. We need to normalize that it's normal to
Yeah,
have biases. It's normal. It's only a bad thing when you don't know about them, right?
yeah,
Or you know about them and they're bad biases or they're negative biases and you don't do anything to change your behavior. That's the only time it's bad, right? You can
yeah.
have unconscious biases and they're not a bad thing until you actually do or say things. That's the thing about unconscious bias is that you're not aware of it and now you're saying and doing things that are hurting other people. And so in my
Mm,
first TEDx talk, I really want to raise that awareness to people of understanding that there's tools out there. I mean, neuroscience has come a long way in the last decade. I'm not
mm-hmm.
a brain expert and I'm not trying to act like I am one, right? So, but I know enough to know that this could make a massive impact on our world, our communities, our workplaces if we just teach people just that little bit to learn about give them some tools so that they can start learning about their own hidden biases or unconscious biases. Because unless you know what they are, you can't implement strategies, right, to help you
No.
mitigate it. So the first step is the reason why I bring this up is to raise that level of awareness with everybody that having biases is normal. It's
Mm,
a bad thing if you don't do the work to learn what your hidden biases are and then mitigate them.
yes.
Right? So watch the first TEDx talk to just get a basic understanding of unconscious bias. I share another framework, Igor, as you know, I love my acronyms. And I use another framework in there called, I use the HAT framework, right? Where I give people some strategies and how to mitigate their unconscious biases so we can create better communities, right?
Mm. It's so funny that you're speaking about these acronyms
I
because
love that.
I just developed actually my own with regards to building community.
Ooh,
So
share
let's
it. Can you share it? I want to hear it.
I'll share it another time because this is about you, not me.
No.
So let's continue the conversation. I want to I know that there's about 12 minutes left. So what are your final thoughts that you'd like to share with us with regards to your power framework and um really about culture? Because I listened to what you said earlier, and you are a culture disruptor. So come in and share a little bit with us, please.
Yeah, I'll go back to this. I think that what we know about culture is there's been a shift in the way cultures
Mm,
are now, right? So
mhm.
a lot of things have happened in the last few years that have disrupted the way we've done things, right? Now
Yeah.
we're dealing with people working remotely. We're working with people all over the globe. We're working with cultures that have multi-generational people in it. We're dealing with still the aftermath of COVID, the politics that we have going on, the wars in the world. Like there has been a lot that have happened that if you're an organization and you're not looking at how to do culture differently and you keep doing it the same way you've been doing it, it's highly unlikely you will stay alive for long, right? That's just a fact.
Yeah.
Right. Look, the diversity and inclusion statistics have been out there for years now, and that hasn't moved the
Mm,
needle, right?
mm,
Despite the data supporting that we need to do things differently. But now, because of where we are, it's undeniable. You cannot keep doing things the same way. They're just not going to
no.
work because the reality has changed, right?
Yeah.
That's like me saying, I'm not going to do anything on Zoom. Okay, I can decide that, but then I'm going to have to do a different business because I can't continue to operate my business like I used to, right? Like I said, 95% of what I was doing
Mm,
is now virtual. So I've had to change or I've had to look at things different. So how you change is up to you. But the
yeah.
other thing I will tell you too is the other thing that's a huge difference in right now and how you approach culture is that what used to stay within the four walls of your organization, where you could treat people badly or you could be not inclusive and no one's going to talk about it, those days are long gone. Spend
Gone.
1 hour on LinkedIn and just read. I do this religiously just because I want to keep a pulse on what's going on in the world. And LinkedIn is my resource. I really don't watch news anymore. I'm really trying to just stay in my little bubble and keep doing what I'm doing. But LinkedIn, which is a professional, the most professional network you're going to find out there. When you look at like the big stream social medias, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and there are people on LinkedIn that are, you know, talking about their experiences, both positive and negative, very publicly. So
Mm,
it's not a matter of whether there's even any truth to it at this point. Someone goes out there and bashes your culture on social media, that's out there permanently unless that person takes it down. And even if they take it down, if 100 people have read it, that's 100 more people that have that information. So
that's
I
right.
think you can't just say one thing and do something inside your four walls. It doesn't work anymore. People are going to talk about it very publicly. So that makes that puts this whole different layer of accountability on the leadership, on the people within their organizations, right? Because people are looking at what you're posting, whether you
Mm,
want them to or not. And it's not always for the right reasons because they should be only looking at it for certain things, but they're
yeah.
looking at everything. It's there's no such thing as private social media. It's all public.
No.
It's all out there, right? And so culture, you have to look at it differently because if you say you care about culture, but you're treating your employees like shit, it's going to make it out there. It's going to get out there, right? Like it's just one. It's so, and the information is accessible at your fingertips. So it's not like
Mm,
you dig too far to get that information, right? So
no.
I think you have to be very intentional in the way that you create your culture. And if you've got bad things that are happening in your culture, that's not to say you can't fix it. Things are fixable, but you have to put the money and the resources and the people behind it to make sure that you're making the better decisions, right? With the information that's available. And now with technology, right? We have so much technology that can keep a pulse on what's going on within the organization. You have to get feedback. You can't run away from feedback. You can't hide from what people are saying. In fact, you got to go the opposite. You got to constantly ask for feedback and
Yes.
say, you know what? We want you to tell us your ideas, tell us what we're doing right, tell us what we're doing wrong, and don't run from it because you'd rather know earlier and fix it
Mm,
and do something better than for it to continue and turn into a lawsuit or get on social media, right? So I'm not trying to
mm,
scare leaders about what needs to be done about culture, but all I'm going to end with is it's got to be intentional and it's going to take money and resources and people. It's not like a
yeah.
checkbox thing. Let's
No.
take Sejal in for one workshop and that's going to help us fix our culture. That's not how it works.
Nope. You're
I
so
can,
right.
I can come in there and I can motivate and inspire and empower people, but ultimately you have to create that comprehensive strategy to make sure your culture aligns with what you're trying to do, right? So
I love it. I love it. Thank you. Thank you, Sejal. Final thoughts and also where can people find you, please?
So yeah, so you can reach me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on there. I am always looking for like good information on culture related topics, as
Mhm.
well as the topics that we've talked about today, Ingor. So I'm always like looking for good factual data, empowering people to do their part, really, because I think it's not just leadership that contributes to the culture. It's not just HR. It's not the lawyers. It's everybody. So I'm
Mhm.
always looking at like ways that we can provide practical tips and guidance to people. So follow me on LinkedIn. You can also look at my website. I've got a ton of resources in my resources section to help organizations create better cultures. And I'll just leave it with one final thought, right? Because I do think it comes, if you look at the talks that I've done and my workshops that I do, it's all about empowering individuals because we have to start with ourselves, right?
Mm.
And what
Mm.
can we do our part to help create a better culture? And so the final thought I will leave everybody here with is what I left everybody with in my first TEDx talk, right? Which is the platinum rule, right? If we just incorporate this platinum rule into our every interaction we have with people, it can make a huge difference. And so the golden rule, which is I know a lot of us are familiar with, is treat people in the way that you want to be treated,
Mhm.
right? Treat everybody in the way that you want to be treated. And the platinum rule is again is treat people in the way that they want to be treated, right? So the
Mm.
only way that I can treat you, Ingor, in the way that you want to be treated is by making time, by being present and connecting with you, by being very intentional about getting to know you. That's the only way that I can treat you in the way that you want to be treated. So if we all start doing that, and we all start thinking about how does Val want to be treated? How does Claudia
Yes.
want to be treated? How does Leslie want to be treated? And we keep that in mind as we're interacting with that person. That's going to improve relationships and reduce the incivility in a big way.
Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. So, if you would like to connect with Sejal and you are listening on radio, her name is spelled Sejal, and her last name is Thakkar. You can find her on LinkedIn. Um, and if you want, you can look for her through her company as well, Train Extra. Thank you, Sejal, for coming, being real with us on this conversation and bringing the fire like Claudia said you would.
Thank you so much, Ingor. I really enjoyed it.
So did I. I want to say thank you to everyone who's tuned in, who's been here with us. And thank you again, Sejal. It was an awesome conversation and it's inspired me to actually see if you and I can have a conversation on the side and talk about more about collaboration. So,
Let's do
um,
it.
you're awesome. Enjoy your hike today. It's a
Thank
beautiful day
you.
out there.
I'll send you a picture.
Yes, please do. Please do. Thank you so much. I'll remove you from stream and I'll see you. Enjoy your hike.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Bye. And if you are still watching, I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. Hello to you, Whitney. Whitney said a few minutes ago, hello from Katy, Texas. Awesome to have you here with us. And to you, Val. Val says, thank you, Sangel and Inga. Outstanding episode. So many wonderful ideas. Wow. It was a jam packed episode. Come on over and join me on the other side and listen in as I wrap this conversation up on radio. Um, we're going to be listening to some music, of course, and wrapping up the conversation. Until next time, take care, be blessed.